It is 6 o'clock in the morning, and I have no reason at all to be up this early, except that I can't sleep. It happens every once in a while. I get bouts of insomnia 2-3 times a year. I'll go for a week and get like 6 hours of sleep in that entire span. It sucks, but what are you going to do? So, what am I going to do? I'm going to kill some time by doing something I should have done about a week ago. An update video. I've been fairly productive over the last month or so. I took about a week off after I finished my tutorial series. Thank you everybody for all the views, for all the comments. It's gone over quite well. It was a pleasure to do, and I'm glad to have it finished, and I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. Like I said, though, I took about a week off after that, and then I got started on my Mobius Models Viper Mark 7. It took me less than a week to finish. It's actually a really, really nice kit. I was really seriously impressed. It had some flaws. As I've mentioned previously, the cockpit is basically non-existent. You know, you got the tub, you got a seat, you got one decal for the DRADIS display, and a pilot. That's it. There was really nothing to it. But the rest of the kit is actually quite impressive. The detail is really, really nice. The panel lines, I mean, while they're kind of thick, are really well done. The fit is really well done. I was especially impressed along the back section here, because the two halves of the this part of the cowling, plus this part of the cowling, plus the main fuselage, plus there's a secondary bit of cowling here. There's so many parts, all with weird compound curves, all coming together in one area, and it actually fits really, really well. There's like no gaps, no weird anomalies with the fit. It actually worked out really, really well. I was very impressed. As you can see, I did mine in flight. Landing gear doors are closed. I have the stand right here. And incidentally, in case any of you have ever wondered exactly what I meant when I've talked about frosting clear parts for diffusing light when I've done electronic projects, as you can see, the stand is clear and it's very much frosted. All I did was I hit that with a thick coat of flat clear. That's the effect that it has on clear plastic, in case you've ever wondered. Essentially, you're creating the same layer on top of your gloss coat as well. That's what brings the gloss down. But yeah, since I had it handy, I figured I'd point it out. I made some modifications to the pilot. I didn't actually use the kit pilot. As I pointed out in the video when I did the unboxing, it does come with a pilot figure that's made of styrene and is made of multiple parts. It has a separate head, main body, right arm, and 2 different chest parts, one for a male, one for a female pilot. I opted to go with the male pilot because I was doing this as Apollo's fighter, since I did my Mark II as Starbucks. But as it turns out, the pilot figure was even more of a disappointment than the cockpit. The torso, like the chest, was it was almost concave. It was very oddly shaped. The proportions were really weird, not to mention the head, which is a separate part, so you can, you know, it's on a socket. You can like turn it left and right if you want to. The neck was really, really long, like ridiculously long. Like if my head was suddenly up here, like the neck scale would have been like 10 inches long. It was silly. Overall, the detail just wasn't really there. So I actually had a spare resin pilot from my Mark II, so I opted to use that. But because the arm for the Mark II pilot is set between the legs, because the flight stick in the Mark II is between the legs, whereas on the Mark VII it's on the right side console, I used the right arm from the Mark 7 pilot, and it worked out really, really well. I painted it using a technique that I had tried out when I had initially done my Mark II, I base coated it with Tamiya flat gold, or pale gold rather, and then did a light mist coat of clear green over top, because the Galactica pilot flight suits have this kind of iridescent greenish gold color. It changes depending on the lighting. I wanted to replicate that as best as possible. Once those two colors were dry enough, I did a dry brush on top with gold again, and that basically, that did it. I then did some detail work on there's a vest and then belts, and then the pilot carries a sidearm. I painted the glass faceplate with clear blue, and some other detail work. But it turned out really, really well. I'm really happy with it. I think it's probably one of the best figures I've ever done. So yeah, after I finished with the pilot, I buttoned everything up. I painted it mixed sort of blue-gray. When I looked at the instructions initially, it called for like a Pontiac engine blue from Tamiya Model Master, and I'm like, what the hell? The Mark 7 isn't blue. What are they talking about? What is this madness? And then I remembered, when I went to Seattle last year, I went to the Science Fiction Museum when they had their Galactica exhibit going on. I believe it's still going on, in fact. If you have the opportunity, go check it out. It's really, really cool. And I took extensive reference photographs of the Mark 7 prop there, and lo and behold, god damn it, it's freaking blue. I had no idea. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes, and it didn't look blue to me, but once I had that thought in my head, is it blue rather than sort of a grayish gunmetal, and looking at it, I'm like, holy crap, it really is. But it just didn't register when I was looking at it before. It didn't seem weird. Anyway, so yeah, do check your references thoroughly. And but yeah, so yeah, I mixed it up. I can't remember what I used. I wrote down the colors that I used to mix it. I put it on the build-up review that I did for escalemodels.com. There will be a link down there somewhere to that thread if you want to have a look. But anyway, I think the color worked out really, really well. I compared it against my reference photos, and it looks like a pretty close to a perfect match. I did some rather light weathering, because the Mark 7s, there's not many of them, and they got scarcely used over the course of the series. I just did some, light scorch marks on the fuselage and on the wings, and burn marks on the thruster blocks. After everything was painted and deckled up, I did a wash with mineral spirits and artist's oils, and I'll go into a little more detail about that a little later when I talk about my other projects I've done recently. But I had a bit of a problem with bad reaction to the mineral spirits. Like I said, I'll talk about that a little bit later. Overall, though, I'm really, really happy with it, but if I was to do another one, I would definitely pick up a cockpit upgrade set. Of all their Galactica kits, I wouldn't call it their best. I still think that their Galactica itself is top-notch. Aside from some detail issues, and I think actually the shape of the ship itself is a little bit wrong, so I don't know if I can really call it their best, but it looks the nicest to me, because there's just so much going on. But I gotta say, I like this one more than their Mark II. Though the Mark II does have a better pilot and a better cockpit. So, they all have their pluses, So now that that's out of the way, after I finished my Mark 7, I decided to get to work on my Transformers kits, starting with Bumblebee. This is a complete repaint. I was debating on whether or not I wanted to do just the frame and leave the armor and then do just some weathering, but ultimately decided the hell with it, I'm going to do like a complete ground-up repaint. The frame was painted with Tamiya Metallic Gray XF56, which is my favorite color for that type of work. It's a really, really nice mid-level, dark, medium gray metallic that just, it sprays really, really easy and looks really, really nice. Once the frame was painted up, I did some detail painting with some more of Tamiya's metallic colors, primarily I think titanium gold and some flat aluminum, which worked out quite well. Once that was all dry, I did a sludge wash with just flat black, heavily thinned with water, which I like the effect that it gives. It's not so much for, you know, creating depth in like panel lines and stuff. It doesn't really work that well for that, but I do find that it creates, for a metallic surface, a nice kind of mottled surface to it. The flat black, when it dries, it ends up very transparent and just kind of adds like some color depth, so it's not monotone, so it's not just the straight flat, you know, metallic gray. Finally, once that was all dry, I did some dry brushing again with flat aluminum. The armor itself, that, like I said, it was a bit of a debate whether or not I wanted to do a straight up repaint or just, pardon me, or just do some weathering on top of bare plastic, but I ultimately decided, the biggest hesitation for me was his racing stripes. Like, he's got racing stripes all over parts of his armor. You can see there's a couple on the back of his leg. Let's get some better lighting here. There we go. You can see there's a couple on his thigh, some more on his shoulder armors, a bunch on his chest plate. See on that little part on the little wing thing on his on top of his chest. I hate masking, but I really wanted to do this guy justice, so I just went ahead and I primed everything using Tamiya Rattle Can Primer, and using a custom mixed yellow color. I think I used like Tamiya Gloss Lemon Yellow and their Gloss Orange as the base colors, because he's not straight yellow. He's sort of a yellow-orange-ish. More yellow than orange, but still kind of got a bit of an orange hue to it. I painted everything, did a little bit of shading, I believe, on most of the yellow armor parts. Once everything was painted and all cured, then I went ahead and did very painstakingly masked all of the armor parts. But before I even did that, I took reference photos of every part with a racing stripe on it, so that I could refer back to it, so that I would do it accurately. And it worked out quite well. The shoulder arm, as you can see, like they each have like a little pin stripe on the outside of each stripe, which was really what was going to make this the hardest, because, like I said, I'm not good at masking. I hate masking. But all I did was I just cut a strip of masking tape with a straight edge that was a little less than 1 millimeter wide, and just carefully placed it wherever it needed to be placed. And it worked out quite well. I was very, very happy with the results. Once the masking was done, the painting was done, then I just did up, detail painting. Like his gauntlets have some metallic gray details on it. His helmet has some metallic gray and has an Autobot symbol on the crest that, unfortunately, because the kit doesn't come with decals, I tried painting, and it just with a fine tip brush, and it looked okay, but not fantastic. It's the general shape of an Autobot symbol, but if you look close up at it, it just looks like kind of an odd-shaped dot. But you know, what are you going to do? I'm really happy with him. It took me about 4 days. of work, you know, a couple hours a day to knock him out. And again, I weathered everything up with artist's oils and mineral spirits once it was finished, and then did some dry brushing, and I was really happy with it. But again, like my Mark 7, I had a bit of a reaction with the mineral spirits, and I'll talk a bit more at length about that when I talk about the last thing that I did, which is Optimus Prime. Which I did very much the same way as with Bumblebee, in that I did a complete ground-up repaint. But in this case, I had somewhat more reason to be paranoid because of his flame decals. The kit comes with a set of flame decals, but nevertheless, I was still... And I just had a piece break off. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about the reaction with the mineral spirits. And like I said, I'll go into more detail a little bit later. I was paranoid about how the decals were going to turn out. Because, you know, when we're talking about an established company like Tamiya, Hasegawa, even Bandai, you know, they've been doing kits like this for a long time. They have a long pedigree when it comes to doing decals. Takara Tomy, the company that made these, to my knowledge, has never done kits like this before. So it's hard to know what their decals are going to be like. So the whole build, I was freaking out that that they were going to... that the decals were just going to sink the entire build. But fortunately, they actually turned out really, really well. Like with Bumblebee, I started by stripping everything down, but because Prime was molded in 3 different colors as his base frame, there was the primary frame was sort of a bronze gunmetal, then some of his detail parts were sort of a medium metallic gray, and then some more were sort of a metallic silver. I stripped everything down and I repainted everything based on those colors. I didn't replicate the colors. I went with more of a lightened gunmetal for the bronze gunmetal portion of his frame. But overall, I was fairly accurate with the colors. The medium metallic gray I used Tamiya metallic gray, and the silver I used flat aluminum. On top of that, though, like Bumblebee, I did a ton of detail painting. Most of it you can't even see because it's underneath all of his armor, but especially on his back, which is kind of a bummer because there's so much to see under there. He's got like his entire exhaust system, his vehicle mode exhaust system hanging off his shoulder blades. And I painted all of that using titanium silver, or titanium gold rather, primarily, and lots of other detail all over his body, all over his torso, his legs, his arms, everywhere. I added tons and tons of detail that you can see in person if you look for it, but it's hard to see if you don't know what you're looking for. Anyway, once that was done, I did likewise, same as Bumblebee, I used basically the same method with him. I did a sludge wash, and then did some dry brushing, and then set the frame aside and called it good, and I got started on the armor. His armor, the red parts I painted straight up using Tamiya flat red, and the blue I did flat blue. Because there's so many parts, so many parts to paint, I use these little gator clips, as I believe I've shown these before, or just on little dowels. I just made these yesterday. I just bought a bunch of gator clips because I needed more, which I could have used when I was working on him. And I have like a 2x4 or a 2x6 with a bunch of holes in it, and I just place them in it as each part is painted. So these hold the part while I paint it, but because there's so many, you know, you've got a really high turnover rate. I like using the flat colors because they dry quickly. So when you work through the 10 or 12 of these that you've got, the part that you did first is dry enough to handle. You can take it off the clip, set it down, and move on to the next one. So it works out quite well. It's a system I've worked out over the last few years, and I like it. You know, Your mileage may vary, but you know, I like it. Another thing that I did that I actually forgot to mention up to this point is his chrome. The chrome out of the box was awful. Awful, 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 awful. Terrible. It was, I don't like factory applied chrome in general. I just don't think that it looks very good. Most of the time it looks very toy-like. The gloss level is all wrong for the scale. So I did something I've never done before. I tried stripping the chrome off. At first I tried using bleach, which didn't work. I left the parts in overnight, and I had some spider webbing here and there on the parts and it just wasn't working out. You know, it was starting to have an effect, but it would have taken a week to really dissolve all of it. So on the recommendation of one of the guys in my hobby club, I bought a thing of Easy Off. I poured a bunch of it into a jar. I still got it sitting in here because I'm lazy and I haven't poured it out. And I just tossed all the parts in there, and inside of about 3 hours they were stripped clean. Worked like a hot damn. Afterwards, just gave everything a quick rinse, wiped it all down. I probably should have scrubbed it, used an old toothbrush or something, but I didn't. Whatever. And let it dry for about a day and a half, and then hit it with a coat of Tamiya Gloss Black. To prepare it for the next step, I used Alclad spray can chrome for Lexan. Now, my hobby shop hasn't carried Alclad products in a couple of years. Pardon me, I think they still got a couple of bottles of like iridescent paint, color shift paint here and there, but you know, it's probably no good anymore. But yeah, they haven't had any of the chrome or metallics for quite a while, which is kind of a bummer because I really like their metallics a lot more than Tester's metallic colors. Certainly a lot more solid and stable. They also had a really good primer. But I happen to have this can of spray paint from a project that never got off the ground from about 4 years ago. And I was emptying my closet one day and I found it and I'm like, hey, look at this, awesome, I'm going to use this someday. And I did. And it worked out really, really well. I've said before, I think, that I don't like using spray cans if I can help it, but in this case I didn't have much of a choice. But it worked out really well, in spite of that. It created kind of a dark, not very glossy chrome that worked out quite well. I've since hit the model with a really heavy flat clear as I usually do, which brought the gloss down even further. But I like how it turned out. You probably can't see it very well on the video, but see on his shoulder, on the air cleaner on his shoulder, it's kind of a mottled, blackish, dark chrome that I think is, and the leg just fell off. I've said before, this is not a toy. The stability in some places is a little bit wobbly, but it's still a really nice model. Anyway, stay. The red and blue parts, after I primed them, I actually didn't use a proper primer in this case. I used Tamiya XF80 Royal Light Gray because it's more controllable. I prefer to use it out of an airbrush than a rattle can because, as I've said, I don't like using spray cans when I can help it. And it's a really nice neutral flat gray that if you lay it on thick enough actually will function as a primer. It kind of will have kind of a gritty texture that will fill gaps if you lay it on thick enough. But it also dries really quickly, so you know that's very handy when you're working with these and you have a really high rate of turnover with your parts. Anyway. Then once that was done, then I did a gloss clear coat. I applied the decals. which were, as I've said, the biggest nerve-wracking moment with the entire build. But they turned out really, really well. I was really impressed, actually. There were a couple, like on his wheel wells on his ankles, that weren't perfect, but on his shoulder armors, on his doors, on his chest, and especially on the armors on the inside of his shins, perfect. Just looked perfect. Also on his forearm gauntlets. All the ones that you're really going to notice turned out really, really well. I was really happy. And then after that, I did some detail painting here and there. Not much that needed to really be done. Slapped everything together, did a wash with mineral spirits and artist oils, and some dry brushing, and then hit him with a flat clear, and called it good. Now I've teased at this, I've hinted at this over the course of this video, and I guess now is really the time to talk about it. Like I said, I've had some problems lately when using mineral spirits as a thinner for artist oils. It seems that with certain kinds of plastics, the mineral spirits rather, are reacting with the styrene. As I said, one of his wheels just broke off of his leg just while I was handling it. And if you look, you can see it's the locator peg that plugs into the socket in the back of his thigh that just snapped. It just cracked off. I had that happen so many times with Prime. I had it happen a few times with Bumblebee, and I even had it happen with the canopy of my Mark 7. I don't know if you'll be able to make that out, but there's a big spider web kind of shattered crack right in the front side of the cockpit. Fortunately, most of it is below the frame line, but it's there and it is kind of visible, which is a bummer. I don't know what's causing it. I mean, I do know it's the mineral spirits that are causing it, but I don't know why, because I've never had this happen before about the last month. If anybody happens to know, any of my viewers, if you've ever had this happen, you've ever figured out what is causing it, I really appreciate knowing. But basically, it's just causing the plastic to turn brittle. So, like, especially on areas where there's stress, like locator pegs or joints or something, I guess it kind of seeps into the plastic, and any minor little cracks that are, or any imperfections, it just causes them to expand, and eventually the entire thing just shatters. Like there was at one point I was working with one of the armor parts on the side of his leg, and I had one of my gator clips. It was holding on to the locator pin, which is a fairly good sized peg. It was about like maybe 3-4 millimeters across, and I was finishing up with it, and I set it down, and about 2 minutes later, it jumped out of the clip. No idea what happened, and it flew across the room, and it was still covered in artist oils. So I'm freaking out that I'm going to have like artist oils on the carpet, all over on the walls. Fortunately, it wasn't a big mess. It wasn't a mess because it was mostly dry by that point. But when I picked up the part and looked at the gator clip, like that peg had just completely just cracked and shattered. The whole thing was just gone. It crumbled to dust essentially. It was a real surprise. I was able to save most of the parts, and I took a picture of it. And it just, there's like, you know how normally with plastic when you bend it, you get kind of a stress mark, it turns white along the bend, and it doesn't just crack instantly? Well, this stuff just cracks instantly. It just straight up exploded. Like there's nothing, there's no structural integrity left to it at all, which is just bananas. I had that happen all over the place with the armor parts on Prime. Fortunately, it didn't happen anywhere important. It was just on the locator pins and sockets and stuff. So I was able to fix it. You know, there was no permanent damage done that couldn't be solved with a little bit of super glue. but I used way more super glue than I was comfortable with on this build. But overall, aside from that, and that's only because of the mineral spirits, other than that, the build went great. And I'm thinking of abandoning the use of mineral spirits for weathering in the future. But other than that, it was a great build. I really enjoyed it. I'm really happy with my end result. One of my favorite models I've done in the last couple of years. Oh, I almost forgot his sword. Actually, the blade originally was molded in clear, but I really hate the way that looked. It kind of made it look like it was a, you know, like a lightsaber or a beam saber from Gundam, and it's totally not. It's a physical, solid metal blade that's superheated. So I did the same thing to the blade as I did to the chrome parts. I chromed it with the Alclad stuff, and then I hit it with a coat of clear orange, which really worked well, because the mottled chrome created kind of a variation in the superheating appearance with the orange over top of it, and then I did some dry brushing, and then the frame over top, and overall I think it looks really, really good. But yeah, I think aside from the problems I had with the mineral spirits, I think this is probably my favorite build so far of this year. Not saying much, because I haven't done a lot of projects this year, but I really, really like it, and he looks really good posed alongside Bumblebee. Unfortunately, I do believe that the kits are both sold out pretty much everywhere at the moment, but if you do happen to find one, if you're into Transformers, if you're into sci-fi mecha modeling, I do recommend them, but be careful when using mineral spirits for weathering if that's what you plan to do. But anyway, so now that those are out of the way, it's time to figure out what to do next. I got a couple things in mind, but mostly I'm thinking about something I've been wanting to do for a while, and I'll do a video of this, an unboxing video of this, probably in a few days. But I bought this online on HobbyLink Japan. Not sure what possessed me to, but this is Tamiya's I-400 submarine, the Japanese submarine, the special edition kit. The I-400 was a specialized aircraft carrying submarine, if you can believe it, from from the Second World War. The intent was to covertly deliver 3 seaplanes to the Panama Canal and then bomb the hell out of it, preventing the United States from being able to shuttle munitions and supplies via the Panama Canal. I think they only ever built 3, and the war ended before they were ever able to be utilized, but it's just such a neat idea. I mean, it's an aircraft carrying submarine, for God's sakes. It has a pressurized internal hangar bay and a catapult for 3 seaplanes. It's the coolest thing. But this is the special edition kit that comes with clear parts, so you can actually see the inside if you want to, though I won't. I will paint it, because otherwise it would look silly. Also comes with an additional, I think, 2 sets of photo etch. One for railings, one for propellers, one for a few other things. And some scale torpedoes and a few other white metal parts. But it was really, really neat looking, and I was really excited when I saw it. So I figured, what the hell, I'm going to buy it, and I'll eventually build it. I've never done any naval kits, so this will be my first. But it should be fun anyway. It's about 6:30 now. I am going to see if I can't put Prime back together. He just fell over a second ago, and I think something else fell off. So, yeah, bummer. So yeah, I'm going to see if I can't fix him, and then I'm going to try and get some sleep. So, thanks everyone out there for watching, and happy modeling.